Are you thinking of leaving corporate, but too afraid to make the move? Have you already escaped corporate, but are finding it hard to run your dream business? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure challenges out on your own? We have created a podcast for corporate escapees running their own business. This is the Corporate Escapees Podcast by Build, Live, Give. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day as a corporate escapee. We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Welcome to the Corporate Escapees Podcast by Build, Live, Give. I'm Paul Higgins and I'm your show host. And today I'm extremely excited to have Kate Erickson from Entrepreneur on Fire. Kate worked in corporate banking, and after 3 years with no promotion, she was really frustrated. Then she finally got a call and her big promotion was on its way. But unfortunately, it was a false promise. And it actually turned out that she didn't get the job. And Kate thought that she's definitely got to take control. So she set a plan in place, and in 6 months she left, started her own business. But after 6 months, she realized that she just wasn't quite ready and she needed some more market experience. So she went back into corporate for 18 months. And then she met John from Entrepreneur on Fire, and the rest is history, as they say. This partnership is now turned into one of the most successful podcasts on the planet. And you'll absolutely love what Kate shares. She gives you rich insights, and the information is just too good to miss out on. So what I'll now do is hand you over to Kate Erickson from Entrepreneur on Fire. If you're enjoying listening to our guest stories, just letting you know we have a community for corporate escapees who are rapidly growing their dream business to find freedom. Just like you, it's called BLG Boost. You get exclusive access to a forum of like-minded peers answering your most pressing questions. You get actionable tips to solve your most common challenges. You get hundreds of trusted suppliers to save you time and money. You get member-only discounts. You get direct access to coaching by a global leader in the field and easy to implement content solving common topics mentioned in popular threads. If you are tired of being alone and are seeking the freedom of running your own business whilst meeting your financial goals, go to buildlivegive.com/webinar. In case you missed it, the link will be in the show notes. Please check it out. Welcome, Kate Erickson from Entrepreneur on Fire to the Corporate Escapee Podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. So, Kate, we're going to get to know a lot about you today in the podcast, but why don't you just start with something your friends or family may know about you that the BLG listeners wouldn't?
I like this, Paul. First off, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me on. Always a great pleasure to connect with you. One thing that my friends and family know about me that others probably wouldn't, I would have to say I have this quite the obsession with scrapbooking. I'm really into photography and pictures, and I love the memories that come from that. So I've kind of gotten into this scrapbooking mode where I create scrapbooks out of, trips or things that, I kind of want to put a collection together of. So I guess that would probably be one thing that I don't really talk about much.
Oh, that's brilliant. And for my 21st, my mum gave me a scrapbook of every year of my life and all the key photos of it. It's amazing. I still get it out on my birthday and look through it. So
that is so cool.
Yeah. So I've got to do a digital version for my kids. One's 16 and one's 14. But I think scrapbooking from that perspective is brilliant.
Absolutely. What a great idea.
Yeah. So as far as you've been a corporate escapee like many of our listeners. Just tell us a little bit about your corporate escapee story.
Okay, so I kind of have two of these. I like to call it my corporate love affair because I escaped and then I went back.
Right.
But so my first corporate escapee story is I was working at a bank in the human resources department. I had a pretty big background in banking, not intentionally. It just happened to be kind of how I started my career off. And it just stuck with me because, as you or anybody else who has been in corporate knows, trying to get a job in a new field is really difficult because they want to see that you have experience. It's such a catch-22. I'm always like, but I can't have experience if nobody gives me the opportunity. So I had kind of fallen into this human resources department position at a bank, and I had been working there for about 3.5 years at the time. Same position. I was at the very bottom of the barrel, so to speak. And, I appreciated a lot of things about this position and this job. One being that I got it in 2008 during, a huge downtime in everything here in the States. So, I felt lucky to have a job, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel very underappreciated and, just kind of feeling like I was being strung along.
Mm.
Purely because of the fact that it had been 3.5 years. I'd never received a promotion. I felt like I was receiving empty promises of there being some type of future for me there. And I think for me at that time, what success meant to me and what I wanted to see and what I thought I was supposed to do was climb the corporate ladder. And so, I think if I were a psychologist, which I'm not, I might guess that after that 3.5 years, I kind of started thinking like, what's wrong with me that I can't get a promotion here? What's wrong with me that, I'm not good enough to progress in the company? And that really started wearing on me. I started hating my job. I started, you know, really being mad about going to work in the morning.
Mm.
And I remember walking into work one day and my boss coming up to me, like so excited, saying, I think that there's an opportunity for you that you're really going to love. And the hiring manager, who I knew because we worked within the same department, is really excited to do kind of like an informal interview with you just to see if you'd be a good fit for the position. She really wants to offer it to you. This position was not only a huge step up for me in the company, but it was going to move me to a different city. There was like a lot of cool things about it that at the time to me was like, this would be success if I could get this promotion. Like finally, after 3.5 years of doing everything I was supposed to do, totally crushing it, if I must say so myself, I was like an amazing employee. I was finally going to get that recognition that I knew I deserved and that I desperately wanted. So I did this interview as a formality, and she said that, I have a couple other interviews I have to do because they weren't allowed to only offer the position within the company for, what kind of rules, I don't know. They had to actually post this job. And she was going to get back to me in a couple days. So a couple days later, my phone rings at my desk. I know it's her. I can see her number on the line. So I'm so, so, so excited. And I pick it up and I'm like, Paul, literally waiting for my job offer. And I'm thinking like, what kind of relocation compensation will I accept or will I not accept? I had told my family and my friends that I was moving to San Francisco. That's where this position was going to be.
Oh.
And I pick up the phone and she's just like going on and on about how perfect I am for the position, how the interview that we had was really great. But they decided to offer the position to someone outside of the company.
Oh, how did you feel then?
I was so crushed. I was so crushed. I mean, not only had I lost like all kinds of confidence and was feeling down about myself and just like, I mean, it was a really horrible feeling. I just couldn't help but feel like there was never going to be a chance for me to do anything because I had done everything that everybody had ever asked me to do at that company. Like, why wasn't what I wanted happening? So actually, as is the case with most really troubling, tough times in our lives, that was a huge turning point for me because it made me realize and recognize one thing, and that's that nobody else is ever going to give me what I want. If I want to see a change in my life, my day to day, the job that I'm going into, how I feel in the morning when I wake up, it's up to me to make a change. It's not anybody else's responsibility to give me what I want. And that was a huge, huge mindset shift for me. That day when that happened, and I realized that light bulb went on for me, I committed to quitting my job within 6 months, and I did.
Great, well done. And I just quickly, I had a similar experience where I was looking to leave corporate, and I was right at the end of my career. I had some health issues, looking to leave, and they offered me a job one day, and then the next day they took it back.
Oh,
And so and my dad spent all his life in corporate, and he used to always say to me, "One day your number will come up." So it doesn't matter who you are, what you do. It's not personal, but one day your number will come up. And I thought, oh no, I've always been promoted. I've been successful. It'll never happen. And when it happened to me, I was like you. I was shocked, shattered, but then thought, no, I've got to take control exactly like you did. And I think there's a lot of listeners out there at the moment that are sort of in that situation where they're nearly waiting for the tap on the shoulder for a redundancy or for something to happen. And with inspiring stories like we're going to get further into yours today, that there are options and you actually can take control. So well done for you
absolutely.
doing that. So fast forward to the 6 months. What happened? What did you decide to go and do? Because I think, is it that you went back? So you left and then went back? Am I following the story right?
Oh gosh, no, I would not.
No, no.
I don't
So
know
that
if I could have. Yeah. So I went back to corporort, but not to the same
not to the
position.
same company. Yeah.
Yeah, not to the same company. So 6 months later, I quit my job as I had promised myself. I saved up a bunch of money. I made a budget. I paid off all my debt. I knew I needed a runway if I was going to give entrepreneurship a go. I launched my first business, which was called Kate's Copy, and I moved. I made all the life changes at once, Paul.
Wow,
I
well
quit my
done.
job. I started my own business and I moved across the country from San Diego to Maine to live with John Lee Dumas, my now life and business partner. So all of those things happened at once, which were quite the upheaval. And within 6 months of that is when I went back to corporate America. 6 months, I gave my first business a go. I struggled over and over and over again. Um, I didn't quite grasp entrepreneurship yet because honestly, at the time that I left my job, entrepreneurship was such a new idea to me that I had no clue. I mean, literally months before that, within the 6 months when I was still at my previous job, looking, to save up that money so I could leave, is when I kind of found out that entrepreneurship was even a thing. I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents both worked 9 to 5, and in some cases, like 9 to 9 jobs. So I was never really exposed to that. So those first 6 months of giving my own business a go were really, really tough. And I made absolutely no progress. I made absolutely no money. And so I decided to go back to corporate, luckily in a position that had kind of been like my dream job for the longest time. So not only did I need a paycheck, but it was actually a position that I knew I was going to be, or I was an account executive at an advertising and marketing agency. And I knew that even though that I didn't want to be at a company, like my taste of entrepreneurship had me sold, I would be an entrepreneur. Um, but I knew that I needed that job. And working in advertising and marketing, I knew that regardless of what type of business I ended up going into, whenever that happened, that marketing and advertising would be a huge asset for me to have.
Brilliant. And look, well done for, making a decision at 6 months. Like if I look back on mine, I actually was probably at 4 years where I really wasn't making it, but I was just so tenacious and I just never wanted to, I suppose, go back. I'd sort of burnt
Mhm.
the bridge. But just sort of dig into, what was you thinking at the time when you got to that 6 month mark where you thought, well, actually, you know what, I will cut my ties and go back to corporate. Just take us to that moment, and what were you thinking at the time?
That was a really tough time because in a lot of ways, I felt disappointed myself that I couldn't make it work. To be honest, I was a bit embarrassed about, what my family and my friends would think about the fact that I couldn't make it work. And, I had such an amazing support system. So I really had no reason to believe that. But, we all know that our mind can play dirty tricks on us.
Mm.
Um, and so I had a lot of those doubts and a lot of those fears when that was all going on. And honestly, I was, just kind of a bit embarrassed about having to go back to a job. Plus, during the interview process and trying to find a position, that was kind of tough too, because the question that I kept getting that I didn't really anticipate because I didn't know that I was going to be going back to get a job again is, obviously you started your own business because you're interested in running your own business. So why is it that you're looking for a job again? And that was a really difficult question for me to answer because I was asking myself the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you answer that question?
Well, for this position that I ended up getting, I did have a background in marketing and advertising, and I am truly passionate about that industry. And this was a very small agency that I was going for this position at. And so, I was honest with them. I said, I love the marketing and advertising industry. I love the agency. Like, I think that it's exciting that there's always something new, that there's always a huge challenge. And whether I decide to go into my own business or not, that's not happening anytime soon. And I told them that I would never be dishonest or keep back from them if I was trying to start my own business again. They were very gracious. I had incredible mentors at that agency, and they were nothing but supportive when I did end up leaving, which is at the time that I joined John at Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Great. And how long did you stay in that account exec role?
It was a year and a half. So it was a good chunk of time.
Yeah, great. So they got great value out of it. You learned a lot of new skills, and then you took those into Entrepreneur on Fire. Just before we go into the build section, which is to ask you more about Entrepreneur on Fire, you talked about family being a great support for you through the transitions. What other support did you get during the transition from corporate to your own business and then back again?
So when one of the things that I did when I left corporate and tried to start my own business is I made it a point to get involved in like a young entrepreneurs type association. It was essentially like, it sounds a lot fancier than it was. It was basically meeting up for happy hours like once every other week or something.
Right.
Um, but it was putting myself in an atmosphere where there were other people doing what I was doing who had, who were going through the same experiences or who had already been through the same types of experiences. So that was really helpful to just build relationships with other people who were in the same boat, who understood what I was feeling, the struggles that I was, coming across. And that was a really great support system for me. And I also, at that time, is the first time that I ever joined a coaching program. So it wasn't a one-on-one coaching or mentorship situation. It was a 5-person, it was kind of almost more like a mastermind group, but it was very specifically led by a single person. And that was incredibly helpful. Like, I still look back on those sessions that I had and what I learned from the other people in that group, in addition to the person who was leading it, our coach. It's still things that I look back on today.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. And to be honest, that's the whole reason why I've built Build, Live, Give as a community, was for what you said, because I did it solo for so long, up to about year 5. And then I joined a mastermind with James
Mm.
Schramko, who you may know, James, from Silver
Yeah.
Circle. And, it was brilliant. And within 6 months, it completely transformed what I was doing. And I just kept looking around. I couldn't see anything for people like us, like, corporate
Mm.
escapees. There was a lot of stuff for, startups. There was a lot of stuff for certain types of entrepreneurs, etc. A lot of female groups, which is brilliant. I'm all supportive of that. But there wasn't really anyone for corporate escapees. So that was sort of the motivation. And I think you're dead right that there's an old African saying that you can go alone fast, but if you want to go far, you need to go together. And I think,
Mm.
that's really important. Brent, so the next section is the build section where we find out more about Entrepreneur on Fire. So when you walk into a party or you walk into a networking event and people ask you what you do, what do you say?
Well, yeah. I kind of go back and forth with this because it's kind of like a 50-50 whether or not someone's going to know what a podcast is.
Yeah.
So typically I'll say something along the lines of I help entrepreneurs who are just starting out to create a scalable business that brings them freedom. And that kind of, I feel, encompasses everything that we do with the podcast, with our communities, et cetera, for Entrepreneurs on Fire.
Brilliant. And I know you travel the world and go to a lot of podcasting events, etc. You and John, where do you see the industry going? And that 50-50, is it changing? Like, is it more and more people getting familiar with podcasts as you travel the world and speak to people?
I definitely think so. Yeah, it's amazing to see the presence that podcasting has. Like when we went to New Zealand right before we came to Australia, um, we held a meetup. Paul Spain, I don't know if you're familiar, really awesome guy, reached out to us. He's in New Zealand, and he offered to help us host a meetup. And I said, I love this idea. We would be so grateful. But honestly, I don't really know, if we send an email out to our list, I don't really know how many people would show up. I know that podcasting is quite big in the States. I know that it's catching on in a lot of the UK, and of course there's podcasters all over the world, but whether or not we could hold a meetup, I'm not sure. And sure enough, we put it out there, Paul put it out there, and we had like 25 people show up in New Zealand for a podcasting meetup with us. And that was really, really cool to see. I think that every single month that goes by with, people having conversations like you and I are having, talking about podcasts with your friends and family, recommending podcasts that you love to your friends. And, the more and more that happens, and the more and more that these incredibly highly produced podcasts like Serial or Slow Burn or whatever it might be come out, I think that inevitably the word's going to continue getting out, and hopefully we'll tip that scale.
Yeah, great. And well done to you and John for being a real forefront in helping push that industry along. I think, you inspire a lot of people, and your show's brilliant, and it certainly helped to move that along. I know you said your ideal client is sort of the entrepreneur scaling and seeking freedom, which is brilliant, but how did you dial down to that? How did you work out that was your ideal client?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the kind words. Really appreciate that. So the avatar that we have, the perfect customer for Entrepreneurs on Fire, um, John created this avatar. His name is Jimmy, and it actually started out that John was his own avatar. So
Right.
creating this, was in a lot of ways quite easy for John to see. He had the idea to launch the podcast and to start this business because of the pain points that he was experiencing himself. So when creating Jimmy, a 38-year-old male, of course there are some differences, married with 2 kids, in a job that he hates, waking up every morning, sitting in traffic to then get to a cubicle and sit in a cubicle all day, around people he doesn't like, doing things that he doesn't like, then getting in the car, sitting in traffic, going home, spending what little time he has left in the evening with his wife and kids before they go to bed, and then wondering why on earth he just spent his entire day 10% doing the things that he actually wanted, hanging out with his wife and his kids, and 90% doing things that he doesn't like doing, sitting in the car and being in a corporate office. And at the time, before John launched this podcast, that was him, minus the wife and kids. But, he was spending all this time in the car, getting no inspiration, no motivation from the radio. He loved listening to podcasts, but most of the podcasts back then, they were weekly or bi-weekly. We're talking like 2011. Of course podcasting was around, but it wasn't nearly what it is today. And so the podcast that he loved listening to, he'd run out within a day. Starting on Monday, he'd already be through all the podcasts because he spent so much time in the car.
Yes.
So he thought, why not be the one to create that daily podcast for Jimmy, who's in the car every single day, who wants inspiration, who wants to learn how to break free from corporate, very much like the people who are tuning into this podcast. And how do I deliver inspiration from people who have been there and who can teach Jimmy how to make that happen?
Great, excellent. And the next question I normally ask is around your business model and revenue, but you guys do such a brilliant job of having that as episodes. So I'll link to some of your monthly activity reports, and people can go and listen to those, because I think you're very transparent with your business model and your numbers. So I won't ask that question, but I'd just love to get your perspective on what you see as your unique value proposition. What makes you guys so successful, and what makes you different to other podcasts that are out there?
Well, there's a couple things that I think makes Entrepreneurs on Fire unique. And when John launched the podcast, it was that it was daily. There were not any other podcasts that were producing a daily show interviewing successful entrepreneurs. So right off the bat, that really made the show unique. I also believe that it stuck and we gained that momentum and that traction, not only because it was daily, but because doing something, making something a habit is much different to, maybe tuning into a show when you're in a certain mood, or a once a week show that you might catch every other week if you have the time. Really making Entrepreneurs on Fire a part of your daily routine, which I know for a fact a large portion of our audience has done. I really think that has set us apart and allowed us to grow our audience to what it is today.
Yeah, and I've got to declare here that I've listened to every episode. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I predominantly when I'm riding my bike, ride my bike during the day. There's not a lot of traffic. I just have it low, but I just love the fact that there's there's so much brilliant content you can get in a short period of time, and like you said, I can just never run out of episodes. So it's fantastic. Whereas other episodes, you've got to constantly change when you're on the bike, etc. So yeah, big shout out to you and John. I love the podcast, and I love the fact that it is daily, and I know every time I go into my feed, I'm never disappointed that there's not episodes waiting for me to listen to. As far
Cool.
as profitability, I know you're very transparent with your numbers, etc. But just how long did it take until you guys got profitable? Because I know people always look at yourself and think, wow, they're so successful, but I know it wasn't like that at the very start. So how long did it take you guys to actually become profitable?
Yeah. So in one of our very first income reports, we cover the first 365 days, which I think would be cool for anyone who wants to really take a deep dive into that, because I'll say that we did become profitable within 6 months. However, I know that that's incredibly fast. The reason that I believe that was possible is because John had financially set himself up to have a runway that allowed him to invest a large amount of money in the business at the very beginning. So he was very far in the red in order to get to the black.
Right.
And so I think that has something to do with it. So we were profitable within the first 6 months, but it took a lot of investing to get there.
Brilliant. And what's your number one source for new business, new listeners?
I have to say word of mouth. And that's the exciting thing about podcasting is 9 times out of 10, when people tell us how they found out about us, it was either because they heard one of us on someone else's podcast or a friend told them about the podcast. And the reason that gets me so fired up is one, that's really great marketing for us. And two, it's exciting for podcasting in general that people are excited to share content with their friends and they're excited to tell people about it. That word of mouth, I think, is the most powerful marketing you could have.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's so easy. Like I use the Downcast app on my iPhone,
Mm.
but it's so easy just to share it, whether it's in to your community on Facebook or to someone on Messenger. So, I listen to about 2 hours a day at 2.5 times speed of a whole selection of podcasts. And when I find something that's really important that I know my community member could benefit from, I just put a little summary in where they should listen to and send it. And it's so easy.
Mm.
Takes me 2 seconds
Yeah.
to share it. And it's interesting. I think Apple, out of all the products they've got, podcasting is the only one they currently don't monetize. So I know they don't do a great job in supporting it, but it's brilliant that you can get all of that effectively for nothing.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, the medium is so incredible for that reason. There's such a low barrier because anybody in the world can listen to it for free. And, that's a benefit for the podcaster and for the podcast listener. It's such a win-win.
Yeah, great. And um, you know, I know that you've had enormous amount of success, but what are some of the struggles that you've had along the way that may not be as obvious to your listeners and certainly my listening community as well?
You know, we have a really incredible team, and we actually talk very openly about our team, how we've built it. I've shared in some of my episodes on my own podcast the struggles that I've gone through and training and hiring and unfortunately firing. That's like nobody likes to do that. Um, and I would say that building a team, while we have an incredible one today, that it takes a lot of work to build a good team. The delegation, the processes that you need to put in place in order to make it happen, even having the level of confidence, or I'm not even sure confidence is the right word, but the ability to let go of tasks is not easy. um, so I would say that as a whole, and plus, since the very beginning, John and I really love running a lean team. We're not in this to create a 50-person company or even a 20-person company. We have 4 virtual team members and the 2 of us, and we love it that way. And to, continue producing the type of content that we produce and continuing to serve our members who are parts of our communities the way that we do, being able to participate in conferences and travel, like we were able to do this past year and the previous years. That all requires a lot of setup and a lot of trust in your team. And so, well, I don't know if struggle would really be the right word, but I will openly admit that that is not an easy process at all, and we've done a lot of hard work to get where we are today with that.
Okay, well, the next section is the live section. And what I'd love you to do is just tell me a little bit about your daily habits that make you successful.
Well, I say this with 100% honesty, as I have every other thing I've said on our chat. I use the Mastery Journal, which is a journal that John created and launched in 2017. It is all about how to master productivity, discipline, and focus in 100 days. I've made that a part of my daily routine, which has drastically improved the level of things that I'm able to get done. Um, I was feeling for a long time like I was working on things that maybe weren't, they weren't the most important things that I could be working on. They were certainly things that I wanted to get to, but I was finding myself kind of getting lost in them. And then hours later, wondering why I had even started on that task in the first place, because there were way more important things that I could have been doing that would have actually moved the needle for our business. And that was really frustrating. I was going to bed at night just feeling like down about my productivity and what I had gotten done. And making the mastery journal a part of my daily routine has helped with that massively. I will also say every single morning, the very first thing I do after I make my bed and brush my teeth and all that good stuff is go on a run or do some type of workout. And for me, that sets my day up for success right there. If I don't work out in the morning, I feel like I have this funk looming over me all day. So that has really been huge for me, is getting that workout in the morning, and then making sure that I am feeding my body the right foods. I do a green smoothie every morning. That's a part of my routine. And that makes it so I'm not thinking about food all morning, and I feel satisfied and good about the nutrients and everything that I'm getting. And I would say right about then is when I'm just kind of making sure that all my distractions are clear before I start work. And that usually involves cleaning the kitchen, because for some reason that really bothers me to know that the kitchen's not clean. So I make sure to do that before I start work.
Brilliant. And what's one goal that you'll be able to achieve this year because you are a corporate escapee? What's something that you know you're going to be able to achieve that you probably wouldn't if you were still in corporate?
The travel that we have lined up, and the travel that we make a priority, that we've made a priority for the last this will be the fourth year. In 2014, that was the first year that John and I completely unplugged from our business, and we traveled with full freedom. We weren't online, we didn't check in. We went exactly where we wanted to go. We had the financial freedom to make that happen. We had the time to make that happen. We had the choice. We didn't have to ask for permission to have time off from work to do that. And every year since 2014, we've made that a big priority. Both of us really love traveling. I think it's such an amazing life experience. And it's allowed us to meet so many people in our community, like yourself, Paul, that, we wouldn't have been able to meet otherwise. So that will be in 2018, again, a priority and a focus for us, and really grateful for that, because I'll never forget the day that I was working at that same job that I escaped, that I talked about at the beginning of our chat, that I had requested time off to travel to Hawaii, and I bought my plane ticket. I was ready to go, and then my time got denied. And I remember thinking that day, I want to be in a position where I never have to ask for permission to go where I want to go, be where I want to be with who I want to be with. That's not how I want to live my life. So very grateful to be able to achieve that goal, hopefully from every year here on out.
Yeah, no, inspiring. And the last question of the live section is, so if John was listening to this podcast, and I hope John does listen to this podcast, what would you say to him for all the support he's given you through this journey?
Oh gosh, John's support has been, everything for me, really, because he's the one that kind of showed me entrepreneurship. He's taught me so much through example. He leads by example every single day. And I'm very grateful to him for not only the lessons that he's taught me, literally when when I have questions or want his advice on things that I know he has experience with. I'm just really grateful that he always has my back, and even when I'm having a tough time or I'm frustrated, he always has the right mindset shift in order, in the lineup for me, and that's made all the difference for me.
Brendan, the next section is the give section, but what I'll do is I'll put some links to Pencils of Promise, and also I'll put some links to some private podcasts that you've done on Pencils of Promise, so that people can find out more about that. And what we'll do is just go to the action section, which is some rapid fire questions and answers to close out. So what's your top 3 productivity tips?
Top 3 productivity tips. Time your sessions. If you're focusing on something, is Parkinson's law, task will expand to the time allotted. So next time you sit down to do something, put a time on it, hold yourself accountable. Number two, make sure that you're setting your day up for success. Productivity starts with a clear mind where you're able to focus. So if you know that there are things that distract you, aka your phone, or for me, the kitchen, take care of it before you start your workday so that it is not an excuse for you. And number three, productivity tip, use a tool like Asana. I love Asana. It's a task management tool that I use. It's completely free. There are many others like it, but this is my favorite. I've tried a lot of them, trust me. And Asana does a lot for you with the free version to where you can share tasks with team members. You can create your own tasks list. You can even kind of build out systems and processes in there with like reminders and recurring events and stuff. So, knowing what you need to work on instead of just sitting there and wondering what's next is really helpful. And I'm able to build that out in Asana.
Brilliant. And other than Asana, what are some of your other favorite apps on your phone?
I love, not even necessarily on my phone. Can I talk about computer apps?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. I really love Rescue Time. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
Yeah. In short, Rescue Time is an app that runs in the background of your computer and it tells you what you're spending your time on and how much time you're spending doing it. So that's really helpful too. And becoming more productive is realizing what it is you're spending your time on. I really love Workflowy, which is just a super simple online note-taking system. They also have a phone app that syncs. So I do everything in Workflowy from create episode lists to draft blog post titles to like my grocery shopping list is in Workflowy. And it's just great because you can access it no matter where you are anytime.
Brilliant. And we'll put links to those and everything else that Kate's mentioned in the show notes. And other than obviously your own podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire, what podcasts or books do you recommend?
Oh, a really amazing book that I would recommend every entrepreneur read, or actually just anyone in life in general, is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And this is a very powerful book. I've actually read it, I think now 4 times. It's very good and very grounding. And also T. Harv Eker's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind was a really powerful read for me in terms of money mindset and all that good stuff. So that's a really good one as well.
Brilliant. And finally, what's some parting advice you'd love to leave the BLG listeners?
Trust your gut and trust in yourself. I know how difficult it is and how many fears there are when you're taking that leap and you're thinking about entrepreneurship, and you probably have, so many different voices telling you that it's not possible or you'll never make it happen or, any number of things. I've heard all those voices, and truthfully, I hear them still today, all the time, every single day. They go away when you take action and when you take that step forward. And yes, they're going to come back, but you have to keep breaking through that. So trust yourself, trust your gut. You can do this.
Great. And how can people find out more about you, Kate?
Everything that John and I do is over at eofire.com.
Brilliant. And look, thanks a lot for coming on the show. You've been a true inspiration to myself, and I know lots of other podcasters around the world. So keep up the great work and have a fantastic day.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by the team at Build, Live, Give. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it with other corporate escapees. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.